Go from, and so I've had so many life changes. I went from living on 160 acres because I lived on a farm in Herman, to now I'm in Columbia in a subdivision, which is very different. Like, I have neighbors, I need to lock doors, and to having my own business, to working for somebody, being at a university, which I've decided is worse than government this morning. Because it's interesting on the spectrum of how quickly change could be made. Small business is the best, and then you got large. And in government, you obviously have bureaucracy. But in the university, you have bureaucracy, and you can't tell anybody to do anything because they have academic freedom. So it's true. It's unreal. So it's much more challenging. And some days very frustrating, but I'm learning that. So it's been a really incredible journey in terms of I left an abusive situation for 17 years psychologically, and so I changed all my friends, my family, my church, everything. So I have gone through, literally everything's changed for me in a year, but it has been an amazing time, and I've been able to work with so many people and impact their lives, and my journey is now one of just continuing that and helping other people live intentionally. And the really neat thing is, I had a student last fall, and she was going to go into business because her family always did. And I said, well, what's your dream? She said, I want to be a veterinarian. Like, well, why don't we develop a personal strategic plan around that? Let's see what that looks like for you. And we did that. She applied to vet school, and she's going to start this fall. Wow. So it's really neat to see people change, or even working with businesses. And I had so many people are told me, you got to be an authoritarian, tough leader. And there's a gentleman I'm coaching mid-state who's got a great business growing, and he said, well, he cares about employees. He wants to be a different type of leader. So we're working on that. So really, just helping people discover what their best is, I think, is so important, and being strategic, which I know you wanted to talk about.
So let's talk about that. What is strategy, and why is it important to a small business owner?
It can be, very classic strategy of how do you position yourself in the market, but it certainly can be just your strategy on so many levels with how are you utilizing your resources, product decisions, etc. But I see strategy as really back to that intentional actions based on the environment and knowing your environment. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are not as aware of their environment as they need to be, and especially in small business. And sometimes that can happen just because you're busy getting the work done. And I've had that too. I was up late last night, you were working on things, and so you're so busy getting the job done, you don't have time to look and see what's going on. And sometimes what's going on is changing, so you need to change your business, so you're changing your organizational strategy. Sometimes, so it could be new products, it could be a new competition, it could be a new opportunity. It's not always bad. And so you could be missing out. And I think one of the things I've seen businesses of all sizes miss out on is they're always saying, well, we're making money. And employees will even say, we're making money. I was with an organization, there's probably about $10 million. And I said, well, okay, great. So how's your bottom line? Well, they were in the red. But they're making money. And you hear that a lot because making money is revenue. We're growing, but how's the profit? Not so good. So I think it's really looking at the business from, you've got to be financially savvy. And I see a lot of small businesses not being financially savvy, so I think that's critical. One of the things I really believe that helps shape in that environment is getting out there with the customers. Potential customers, lost customers, current customers. And I think as you look at allocating resources, I think one of the best uses of external consultants is the assessment of your environment. Because I think you get the most bang for your buck there. And I'm not saying other things aren't good, but as I look back and I saw all the things I did when people were the most satisfied, because you're going out, you're talking to customers, and a lot of times I had one organization, they thought everybody loved them because they were creative. So I went and did all these interviews with customers, and I said, tell me, why do you employ this organization? What makes them better than others? What do you think about the creativity? Like, we don't even care about their creativity. We're going to do the creativity in-house. We don't want them to be creative. But they said what's happening is the industry's getting so consolidated, we're a number at every other firm. We'd like somebody to treat us special. So we shifted from a be creative strategy to a customer boutique strategy where we care about you. It made all the difference in the world. So that's part of strategy, but then the other part is you can say that, but are you doing
Right,
it?
that's right.
And it's that alignment piece that's so critical, and that's what we talked a little bit about in the strategy class, and I do more in the others is, okay, well, great, so your customer boutique now, but is your organization aligned to that structure-wise, your employees incented around that? You know, what are some, and so that gets into the internal environment. What's really going on in the organization, and so there you can get to that information. I think best through focus groups and interviews. I mean, surveys are nice, but the qualitative stuff is where it counts. And so a lot of times organizations, so they're happy about revenue, but they sometimes don't realize they're leaving money on the table because their expenses are way too high, or they're not even pursuing clients that are out there, and there's a lot of missed business opportunity. And so I think that's sometimes a problem, and if they don't have external stakeholders or shareholders putting pressure, they just get happy with the status quo. And I think that's a little less in this business environment. If anything, that's in some ways good. It's making businesses stronger. But I think it's something you just have to really guard against, because it can be. You can be doing so much better often than you really are. And I think the advantage of, and you can do this if you have external employees, is, or not external, but new employees, is just that fresh look at the business. To really encourage them to say, you know, make it acceptable to say, why are you doing it this way? And not be defensive. Because it's easy for us to say, well, because we have to do this way. Or I can tell you in the department that I'm running, it was up and going for about 3 years. We've changed a lot just based on some questions of why. And I just hired somebody new in January. And she's asking, even 1 week in the job, well, why are we doing this? And we step back and ask, well, because it used to be done like that, and who else needs this? And 2 weeks ago, I eliminated a whole week of work from her. So now I've got 40 hours for her to do something that's value added, which is awesome. And she's psyched because she's going to do something that draws on a higher level of skill, which is back to empowering the employee. So I think the more you can utilize fresh eyes, and I found as a consultant, and I was a COO for one organization I was a consultant for. They brought me in as COO, which was really interesting. But I found after 9 months, you become them.
You do. I've been there.
Sure. And I'm about the 9-month mark at Mizzou. And I'm seeing a little of that. You start blending in with the organization. And so you got to be aware of that and maybe just keep refreshing and challenging yourself.
So on that note, let's talk a little bit about process improvement. You mentioned you have a new employee who started questioning why, and it's one of the things that we do as consultants is work on process improvement. But not all business owners know that they necessarily even have processes that could be improved. They just do what they do. So from your viewpoint, what is process improvement? Why would a small business owner kind of tackle process improvement as a place to start to grow their company?
I think one of the
clean up their company really, but that leads to growth.
Well, and as you're growing, if you're not keeping an eye on processes, what can happen is you can miss some of those elements that you're trying to be strategic with. So, for example, I'm trying to think of why you talk about quality, that you try to really provide quality. And I think
that would be part of the strategy.
Company.
The strategy would be quality.
Quality, but if your process is such that you're not building in quality, then you've got an issue. Or if you're trying to keep your costs low, which everybody really needs to, if you're having any redundancy or rework, you're increasing your costs. So processes are important from the standpoint of ensuring that you're delivering what the customer expects on time, but you're being really efficient and you're not wasting resources. And I have to admit, I really do not like process improvement because it's tedious.
Yes,
It's boring. And I do personality assessments, and so if you've got somebody who is very into details and likes process, it's a great project for them. Stick them on it.
I have someone in my company who about 50% of her day is process improvement for our clients. She goes in, she does the internal, external interviews, looks at the process, develops it from head to toe, develops the checklists, everything related to the process, and it's what she does all day.
But for everything that you do, and I would start with what are the processes that most impact your delivery of your product or service. You can start with the beginning and just start lining out what the steps are. I mean, it's really simple For us, one of the processes we've got is just a student entering the school and then all the way to graduation and interaction with different departments and data, and we're finding that different people are telling students different things. We're having duplication.
Welcome to the university.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But it happens in organizations, and I had one organization where they documented the process. They were able to eliminate 30% of the steps. And one of the things that's really cool that you could do is you could even have if you depending on your size, you could have a few employees actually write the process out and buy some of that butcher block paper. And I've done that, and you put it down a whole wall, and you have them write out the process. You could do flow charts, just little squares. It starts here, it starts there. One of the things we did is we took every piece of paper that's associated with the step of the process, like say it's an order form, or or something if you have some type of small production. Even maybe it's an order form for a box of chocolates or whatever it is. Here we had one where sales were developing orders for it was a fixture in homes, but it was a custom design, so it had to go to the factory for fabrication. And so we put all these different forms up there, and so it's from the time the order comes in until the time it actually gets installed. And then we gave employees 3 weeks to comment. And where does this break down? What are the problems? What's missing on the form? So the people in the factory are like, we don't even look at this whole half of the form. Why do you bother? But by the way, if we had these things, we wouldn't be reworking. So you get all that stuff up there, which does a couple things. One, you get real knowledge. Two, it makes people feel like they're a part of it. And then you get the team to come back and revise it and say, okay, here's the new process. And we had one where this one piece of paper was actually bouncing back and forth like 3 times between these two people. And you had to say, okay, maybe if we shift responsibilities, it stays there and you don't create a bottleneck. So it's that type of thing that's so critical. And so that's something you can, and I would say start with the one that's going to have, how should I put this, the best value. Because you could have one that's going to add a lot of value, but maybe it takes 3 months, and so it's complicated. So I would start with one that's going to be a quick winner, because that way you create momentum. That's really important in an organization. You don't want to get something started, but it takes so long, people are thinking, oh, nothing's ever going to change. So you want to keep a sense of, feel the pulse of the organization, and if momentum's going, then you can start on another project. So I would start with something that's kind of the low-hanging fruit and then move to the more difficult ones. But you'll get people excited, because I can tell you when Heather saw that she had 1 week more of good work to do, she was psyched. And it energizes the other employees too, because they're saying, wow, we can challenge things. It's okay. And you got to be aware of that. When she first challenged that, I sent an email to her and I said, thank you so much for feeling open in the meeting to bring that up, because it could have been scary. It would have been scary in other departments, I know, in the school. So you've got to create that environment.